What about accessories for April?
One thought I had was enamel, bangles, pendants, earrings.
No, we did that 2 years ago. What else?
Well, they're showing a lot of florals right now, so I was thinking I could do a
Florals? For spring. Groundbreaking.
I know videos like this are a dime a dozen this time of year, but I love to watch them and I figured I could put my own little Dungeons and Dragons twist on it. So instead of doing a tier ranking, I'm going to be doing an alignment chart of the 9 books I read in 2021. Disclaimer right at the start, I came up with this idea back in like late October, I think. And at that point, I really had read 9 categories of books, I should say. You know, I'd read a couple series that I could truncate down into one book. Since the inception of this idea though, I have read more than 9 books for the year, but we're gonna stick with 9 just because that's how many slots are in an alignment chart and I just want to go with it for comedic purposes. Now, on the off chance that you don't know what an alignment chart is, if you've ever seen one of those memes where it's like 9 boxes and it says this character is chaotic good, this character is lawful neutral, it's that. And specifically it's used often in the game of Dungeons and Dragons in character creation. And an alignment chart specifically has 2 axes from going up to down. It's good versus evil, and then going, oh gosh, I don't know how this is gonna show up in the video, but basically from one direction to the next is chaotic versus lawful. Okay, I'm scooting over a little bit to potentially, hopefully make room for a graphic. We'll see if that actually works out. Now, when I was making this chart, I was interpreting the axes a little bit differently. If a book is good, it means I loved it or really enjoyed it. If a book is evil, it means I actively disliked the book. And if it's neutral, that one's pretty self-explanatory. It means I was neutral on it or just kind of semi-enjoyed it. Now, chaotic versus lawful is a little bit more, I don't know what I'm doing. If it's a book I don't really respect, I gave it chaotic. If it's a book that I have a lot of respect for, I gave it lawful. But that one is a little bit more woo-woo, as this indicated. So sometimes I just assign something as chaotic because I felt it was chaotic. Okay, so right off the bat, up first, we're going with chaotic good, and that is the Ice Planet Barbarian series. There are over like 20 or so books in this series. They had kind of a moment on TikTok a couple of months ago.
I don't even know if it was a couple of months ago. It might have been over the summer. It might have been a long time ago. What is time?
Basically, a whole bunch of human girls get dropped off on a alien planet and have sexy, great, fun times with Ice Planet Barbarians. If you're interested to know my very full, fleshed out synopsis of that first book, the video is linked below. This is where the like respect versus don't respect comes into question, because like, it's not that I actively disrespect Ice Planet Barbarians, it's just that is the one that feels very chaotic to me, and thus it's chaotic good. Next is neutral good. This one might be a little bit contentious within my own family if any of my family members ever see this video. But I'm going to place all of Jane Austen's novels in this category as neutral good. Why? I really thoroughly enjoyed them. I read them as part of a book club with a high school friend this year, and Jane Austen is a huge part of my family's dynamic. Weirdly enough, a lot of my life does revolve around Jane Austen. So why does her body of work not get placed in lawful good? Why does it not get the moniker of highest amount of enjoyment and highest amount of respect? It's because of Mansfield Park. You know what you did, Jane. But overall, very enjoyable. And if you were curious, out of all the novels Jane Austen wrote, I was quite surprised to find out that my favorite was actually Northanger Abbey. I thought I was gonna walk away thinking it was Pride and Prejudice, but I read this one and it totally changed my mind. I love the meta humor on this. I love all the commentary on writing in general and novelists in general. And just, I think it's a really good satire, and I was laughing like out loud all the time. So if you have not checked out Northanger Abbey, and if you're a writer specifically, I recommend it. It's fun. All right, my lawful good book, otherwise known as the book I loved the most this year, was The Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green. It's a collection of essays from the novelist John Green, just about kind of his thoughts on a lot of aspects of living in the Anthropocene, which is the current era that we live in. It's the era of human life and humans having an effect on the environment around us. It's fabulous. I sobbed. I mean, bawled my eyes out multiple times. Definitely got a migraine after this one, but it was worth it. Moving down into the neutrals. My lawful neutral story for this year is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I have it as lawful neutral because I enjoyed it, but also I had some major issues with it. I really liked the concept and I respected the way it was executed, and I could tell that a lot of work and effort had gone into the story. Also, I think I just suffered a little bit from being overhyped from this one. I think someone told me it was gonna like change my life or something like that, and that's just hard when you go in with that sort of expectation. But I think overall it was wholly decent. There was kind of a je ne sais quoi about it that elevates it a little bit to me from just like a true neutral to a lawful neutral. Also, I think elements of it I could consider using as like a comp title for one of my projects, so I don't want to like totally bash it. It's not a book that I think I would ever read for a second time, but I don't regret reading it. Does that make sense? My true neutral book this year is Odin's Child by Siri Patterson. This was recommended to me by a couple of people and I ended up buddy reading it with Danny over at Somber Honey. And I say buddy reading it with quotes because she finished it in like less than a month, I think, and it took me, I can't even remember. I think I started in June and I think I finished it in August. Why is this a true neutral book? I think it had a really interesting concept. I was really intrigued by the kind of different fantasy aesthetic. The world building felt very unique and I really enjoyed the writing style at the start, but I just feel like this book really could have been about 100 pages shorter and we wouldn't have lost much. My battery died, so I have no idea what I was saying, but basically this was my true neutral book. Okay, next we're skipping down to the evil section. For lawful evil, I have the His Dark Materials trilogy. This was another series I was reading for my book club with my high school friend. We read it at the beginning of the year, all 3 books. It's the Golden Compass, the Silver Knife or something like that, and I've forgotten what the last book was, but I don't know. I thought the Golden Compass was really good, but as the series continued, it just got really crazy and I was super mad at the way it ended. And so it gets a lawful evil from me because I can respect it for what it is, but I did not like it. Then we have my neutral evil book, which is If We Were Villains. I read this book in the hopes that it might be a comp title for my project EC. I made a whole video about my thoughts on this book, so I'm not gonna go too deeply into my issues with it. I think it was very well written. I just dislike how it ended and some of the character choices, etc. The reason this is a true neutral though is because of all of the Shakespeare quoting. I lost a little bit of respect for it because I felt like that was kind of cringe, but it did make sense for the characters, so I understand why it was what it was. Now for chaotic evil, the book I hated the most this year is The Second Sleep by Robert Harris. This book is basically about a medieval monk who goes on a journey of self-discovery, and spoiler alert, there's a twist about a quarter of the way through the book that this is not actually a medieval monk, but it is a monk like 500 years in the future after a post-apocalyptic event. I had a lot of issues with this story. It was from a perspective I didn't really care about. It characterized the female characters in a way I didn't really care for. The one good twist, like I said, happens a quarter of the way through the book, and even though I think it's an interesting concept and could have been executed very well, I do not think it fulfilled that execution. So this is chaotic evil because I didn't like it and I didn't respect it. Finally, the book that gets the moniker of chaotic neutral that I skipped earlier because I was saving it for last, that would be my own book, my project EC that I had to read in the beginning of 2021 as I was prepping to do a new draft. And that old draft and the subsequent new draft, I both assign chaotic neutral because I don't like or dislike that story, but I sure as hell don't respect it. And I really feel like as a story, it shifts wildly from draft to draft, which very much had chaotic vibes to me. So I feel like assigning it as chaotic neutral is very fitting. Which, you know, I am so quick to roast my own books, so the fact that it made a neutral slot and not an evil slot, I think is showing some personal growth on my part. I'm gaining confidence in the story. So like I said at the beginning of the video, I have read some books since I came up with this concept. Mainly, I listened to the audiobook for Dune. If I had to place it, I think it might be a solid true neutral, definitely an Odin's Child type tier of book. I would say I probably liked those two books about the same. I think I probably enjoyed Dune a little bit more than Odin's Child just because I think the audiobook was so good. But if I had to place it along this alignment chart, that would be where I would put it. And of course I did beta read a ton this year, but obviously I will not be ranking them or putting them in an alignment chart today. Overall, I am actually very impressed with how many books I managed to read this year. In December, I felt like I had really failed in my goal to read more in 2021, but I read all the Jane Austen novels, all of his Dark Materials, a whole bunch of random books, a whole bunch of beta books. If I include the beta reading, then that's more than 20 books. Again, I know that there are some people here who 20 books is like their monthly goal, but I was coming off a multi-year stretch where I was in the single digits for years and years and years. So to get into the 20s is pretty great for me. And one of my main goals for 2022 is to reduce my amount of time that I spend doom scrolling either on Twitter or on Tumblr or, you know, just wasting time on TikTok, and take all the time that is freed up from that and read more. So hopefully next year I'll have multiple alignment charts to make. Or potentially I will read 0 books this year. Knowing me, either is a possibility, and we will find out next December. But until then, go be happy, go be healthy, and go write and read. Bye. Eesh, there we go. I know it's low light. My camera just told me it's low light because I put my hand over the lens. Thank you for that warning. It was pointless.